All right. Sorry about that, guys. We had a little bit of a scenery change because I am a baby and it's fall and I wasn't prepared. So whoever's watching the video, we moved because
he,
I was freezing
he
and
was
couldn't
crazy.
concentrate. So a little bit of an intermission. I think we were kind of talking about your mom,
Mm.
right? And just what you've kind of been struggling with, where you are at right now. Can we dive a little bit more into that? Like,
Yeah.
can I ask, like, how she passed? Like, what was she going through?
Yeah, so she had some health struggles. Um, she um, got a biopsy done earlier in the year because she had found a lump in her breast. The biopsy came back benign.
Mm.
So, we were kind of like, okay, well, it's nothing super serious. She was going to the doctor, getting testing done. Everything always like came back normal. Um, I mean, she did like ultrasounds too, and they're like, we don't know. So, she started uh, getting like really tired. Um, I want to say like in February or March, and she had fallen. My parents have a farm.
Mm.
She had fallen and hurt her back pretty bad, and she just never seemed to like recover from that. She's like, my back just hurts really bad. And in May, I feel like she was just really struggling. I had planned a trip to go see my sister who had a baby, and we were talking a little bit about it on the way to the airport because she was driving me there. And I was like, Mom, that's so good that it's benign though, and she's like, I don't know, I just feel like something's wrong. And she really wanted to get a second opinion at a cancer institute, and they were like, well, we won't admit you because your report's benign. And so
Mm.
there ended up being like a medical emergency in June. I don't really want to like do too much details, but basically she ended up being admitted to this cancer institute that they had looked into like months before on the off chance that they needed it. And that's when we found out that it was cancer. So that was the end of June, was breast cancer. And she was in the hospital for a couple weeks. She came home. They kind of like came up with a plan, like we're going to start chemo, you're going to do immunotherapy, all this stuff. And um, her numbers just like weren't where they were supposed to be. And so they're like, we can't do chemo yet. So they sent her home just so she could like kind of regain her strength. And she went back like a week and a half later, and we didn't really hear anything from my dad. She was supposed to get chemo that day, and we're like, hey, how'd it go? And he's like, it wasn't a great day. Um, and then we had like a family meeting the following week, and he was like, Mom can't be treated, so basically we just have to make her comfortable. So that was the worst phone call in my life. Like, I thought maybe they were going to be moving down because it was in Indiana. Um, but he's like, they can't treat her because the chemo would just kill her. So the cancer had spread to most of her body, and it was compromising her bones. So we only knew for like a couple weeks. I think a lot of people think we like hid it, but we actually didn't know very long. So we found out at the end of June. She was in hospice for 6 days, and then she died on July 17th. So it was very sudden.
It's very
Um,
fast, yeah.
yeah. And I told my dad the other day, I was like, I knew that it was a possibility that she would die, but I really didn't think she was going to. And he was like, well, that's hope and faith. And I was like, I don't feel like I have that anymore. Like we had this hope that she was going to get better. And, like you're taught, like if you believe and you pray and, God honors faith and all this stuff. And it didn't happen. And so I was like, again, wrestling, just like, okay, does faith even work? Like, why didn't God come through for my mom? Or, like all these things, like, oh, did somebody doubt? That's another thing with kind of like the faith that I had growing up. It was always like Jesus already did the work on the cross. So if something doesn't happen, it's not Jesus' fault. Like, it's our fault. Like, it's like we doubted or we didn't have enough faith or all this stuff. And after my mom passed, it was like I started wrestling with that, like, oh, did we just not believe hard enough? Or like, um, somebody suggested like maybe she just didn't have enough faith. And I was like, I don't think that's it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started, I just like, I would tell God, like, God, did I just not have enough faith? I don't understand. And I feel like I don't understand what it means to have faith. And like, um, there were these like lies in my head, and I knew they were lies because I like had them in my head, and I was typing them out one day to my friend, and I was like, I have these thoughts, and it's like, well, if God says he's a healer, why didn't he heal your mom?
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it out, and I like gasped out loud because I made the connection between the garden and the serpent when he's like, oh, did God really say, And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's not right. And one thing that my mom kept saying at the end, um, she she's amazing. She is dying, and she's just still praising the Lord and giving him glory and telling us how good God is. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, God is still faithful, and he's married to his word. And so if he says he's good, and
Mm-hmm.
our circumstances don't change that. Um, so there's just been this wrestling with like faith. And um I opened up my Bible to Hebrews, which I'll just like kind of read a part briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm like, I just don't understand, like, my mom had faith, and if you look at her journal, she had so much faith, and she believed that God was going to heal her and she was going to get better, and she was always listening to the word and always had worship music on. Like, that's like what I think of her when I think of my mom. Like, she always had like the Bible app playing the word, and she just loved to listen to the word. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, God, like, I don't understand faith really. And I was reading in Hebrews 11, and it talks about like by faith, and it just goes through like all these people who have like faith, and like it talks about Noah, Abraham. And it says in verse 13, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. And they admitted that they were aliens and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. And so that was really comforting for me because I'm still struggling. Like, I was just struggling with the whole faith thing. And it's like these people were people of faith,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't receive what was promised to them, but they were still credited as righteous because they had faith. And then like later on, it like keeps talking about like all these wonderful things that happened from faith, right? Like by faith people passed through the sea on dry land, but the Egyptians were drowned, and Jericho and Rahab and all this stuff. Through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, all this stuff. And then it says, others were tortured and refused to be released so that they might gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned, they were sawed in two, they were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute and persecuted and mistreated. The Lord was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. They were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. And so, excuse me, I like read through this, and it's talking about, oh, faith, 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 like all these things. But then there were a lot of people who had faith and they didn't actually receive what was promised to them. But we know that God is still good on his promise and his word doesn't fail. And so um, my mom did receive her healing. I mean, it wasn't how we wanted, but she's healed in heaven now,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the hope of the cross where it's like, yes, bad things happen and sins in the world, and we're going to face pain and suffering, but one day it's going to be made right and God's going to redeem all of it and we're not going to have those things anymore. But it's hard.
There's a couple things that I wanted to point out, and we can just discuss them as I go, but it is so hard to not want to understand and like know why things happened the way they did.
Yeah.
But I think that's just where faith comes in, is like, and it's not wrong to question him and to like want to know like why it happened, but we won't always understand.
No.
Like there's not going to be an answer for everything.
I think that's just like our humanness coming out, like our need to know, right, and make things right and understand.
That's where a lot of like people that aren't Christian like go against God, because they're very like logical, and it goes way past logic because he's supernatural, and it's not like anything else in this world. Like it's not like a lot of it's not logical, and that's where faith and belief in him comes in.
Absolutely. It doesn't make sense, really.
Yeah.
Like I said, like from a worldly standpoint, from circumstances, like anyone would probably say, how could a good God do this, right? But he didn't.
He didn't.
No.
And that's another point I wanted to bring up, and he didn't do that.
No.
To your mom.
Sin did that.
Sin did that. The enemy did that. Because like I think I mentioned, like the first time I met you, it's like we can't. If he did it, then why are we praying to him to like take it away? Like it can't be both.
Yeah.
To continue to have faith and believe in him, even if, like, even if something doesn't happen, even if like the outcome goes against like what we wanted, like just keep pursuing him and keep pushing in, and like we will always have faith no matter what, like no matter what like the outcome is in certain circumstances and situations. He's, like you said, he's always good. He's always loving, and he never changes. I don't know if it's like, if it comes across in any certain way, but she's like in a way better place right now. She's not suffering anymore. She's not hurting anymore. She's in heaven. And and it's awesome that, and I never got the chance to meet her, but we're gonna be with her. Like you're gonna be with her again one day, and like, and I know you can't wait for that.
It's weird because, I mean, there's even still moments, but early on people would be like, oh, I'm so glad she's not suffering. And it's like, for somebody who's legit mourning, that doesn't feel good. Like that just hurts, because obviously we don't want her to suffer, but we wanted her here more than anything, but again, it's the looking to, eternal, and the hope we have in Jesus, where he's going to make it right and we won't ever have to be separated again, but it just comes with time and like little by little pieces of healing, where like, saying those things like doesn't bother me as much anymore. But like a month ago, it was even just hard for me to picture her in heaven, because it just hurt so bad, where it was like, I can't even imagine what she's doing, because you have all the traumatic memories still just stuck in your head, and you can't like go back or go forward. It's almost like you're just frozen in time. And so I felt for a while like I couldn't remember anything good about her, like before she got really bad. I can't picture her worshiping Jesus in heaven, like, and free. All I can picture her is like when I'm standing at the foot of her bed and like seeing her suffer. And so, and like I still have days where like that's all I think of. But again, it's like this world's not my home, right? And this isn't all there is. Like we have the one day hope that it's going to be made right and we're going to be with Jesus and we're not going to mourn anymore.
Mm.
And just to think about that, like one day I'm not going to feel this way anymore. Like
Yeah.
I just whacked it again. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Wham! I'm getting excited.
If you have headphones in, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You're good.
But you know, it's the battle versus physical and spiritual. Like
Yeah.
the longing to go and be with Jesus and like be with my mom and see her again, but also like knowing that my time's not done yet on earth. And so it's weird having those worlds like really collide now, you know,
Yeah.
like I want to be with my mom. I want to be with the Lord. I don't want to feel this pain anymore because it's the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And it's
Yeah.
weird because it can be emotional pain and actual like physical pain. Like it feels like there's just like a weight on you, a physical weight. It's so strange. But then just putting your mind on things above, you know, again, like the dying to yourself. Like I don't feel like worshiping, but I'm going to. I don't feel like going to Jesus, but I'm going to because he's worthy of it. You know, he's worthy of my praise. He's worthy when I'm suffering. He's worthy when I don't feel like it. He's worthy when my circumstances are not good. He's worthy when they are good, you know, but it's a process, you know, and there's wrestling and it's not, like I said, it's not always pretty. But you have to make a choice. Like, am I going to turn away because it's hard and like that feels better because I'm angry and I don't know where to put my anger except at God, or am I gonna get back up and pick up my cross and keep following him? So
you talking about your mom kind of in like mourning and all of those things kind of makes me think of like the story of Job. All of these things are being taken away from him, and God doesn't expect him to like not show any emotion towards it or not like be emotional or anything. He's not, God doesn't want us to just be like an emotionless tree in the wind or whatever.
like
Like
a robot or
nothing
something.
bothers us. Like
Yeah.
Job like cursed God. He was like,
He's angry.
I can't remember. He might have hated him like in the moment. I mean, I hear you, and there's nothing wrong with like feeling how you feel, and it does. I can see how like it would hurt for people to kind of like try to rush your grieving process and rush your mourning and
Or like fix it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You can't, you know, and there's no like, there's not really a timeline for it, you know,
like especially if like somebody hasn't gone through the same thing and they're trying to tell you like give you like trying to tell you things that they haven't gone through, like they don't know how it feels.
But I think grief just makes people uncomfortable because like even I didn't know, and I had to apologize to somebody who had lost their mom before me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry if I said anything, which I know I did, to make you feel like I was like trying to fix it, or if it came across like I was rushing you or like trying to make things better, because you can't make it better. And that's like our natural instinct to like want to fix things, like, oh, you're hurting, like let me help you. But I think in grief, the biggest thing you can do is just be there for somebody and acknowledge that they're hurting and that it's probably the worst pain they're ever going to feel, and just offer them help and like I'm here, like whatever you need, can I bring you food, can I, or like texting, like I remember there was people who would text me and just be like, you don't have to respond, and like took the pressure off, but I'm here for you and know that I'm praying
Just
for you.
always checking in.
And that was more helpful because like you feel alone, you don't want people to try to fix it because it just makes it feel worse, and then you just want to almost feel seen, I think, and just knowing that people are there when you're ready. Or like my friend Taryn, she was so sweet. Like I think a couple weeks after it happened, she was like, I don't expect you to tell me anything. Like, and everybody wants to know, like, oh, like what? Why didn't they do this? Did you do this? But like how was she at the end of her life? And it's like, you already relived through all those things. You don't want to have to say them again if you're not ready to. And so she was like, I'm like, I don't expect you to tell me anything. You don't have to, but I'm here for you. Like, if you want to talk about it. And that was so much more helpful than somebody who, oh, well, she's not suffering. Oh, well, like this. But we just don't know. Like, you don't know until you're in it how those things can come across. And then somebody who's been grieving for a year might be more responsive to different things. But like early on, it is such a raw place to be where anything and everything can just like send you over the top, because you're hurting. You're hurting. So.
Yeah, Taryn's awesome.
I love her so much. Shout out, Taryn.
I just became friends with her and Joel recently, like maybe about awesome. Like a month or two ago. But yeah, they're awesome. I love them both.
I kind of like did a side tangent. Sorry on that one.
Talk as much as you want.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You don't gotta apologize. Your mom seemed like such an incredible person. I never got the chance to meet her, but it's weird because like, little side note right here, my mom actually met her before.
What?
Yeah, so the people that we bought our house from were like friends with her, I guess. And then I guess my mom met her briefly at like a get together or something like that. What? I told her, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a podcast with Adriana soon, and she's like, oh, I've never met her, but I knew her mom. I'm like, that's so strange.
That's crazy. That's like making me tear up a little bit. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know like to what extent, like maybe like if they've talked or anything like that, but I know she briefly met her.
Wow.
A while ago.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Like I was saying, she seemed like an incredible person, and like just it seems like she really influenced you, and like you said, she was unashamed just of Jesus and just of everything, like going up to people, like random people. And I think we can all learn something from your mom and how she lived. And I think you had such like a wonderful person to like look up to and influence you. And I can see that in you too. Like I'd never met your mom, but I think you bloopers. No. It's awesome that you have somebody to like look up to like that. And I think that I think what she would want you to do is just keep living as she lived.
Yeah.
Unashamed, like spreading God's love.
Yeah.
And just like the domino effect that it can create, like you showing your children that, you showing your friends that, and everybody around you. Like I said, just keep spreading it everywhere. Are you one to just be able to like go up to like a random person and pray for them like in public?
No.
I
don't usually have issues like talking to people.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not one to do something like that. Like, oh, can I just pray for you? Or so I want to be, like the way she lived her life makes me want to live with more intention and just, it talks about like finishing your race strong, running the races to get the prize. And this has just showed me too. I feel like it's just like kind of put like a fire under me. Like life is short. Yeah. It really is short. We don't know how much time we have. And that's kind of like a scary thing, but also it's like, it should push us further to be like, we can't waste time. Like eternity is at stake,
thriving in the last days.
Yeah. Thriving in the last days. Yeah. And it's like, so we need to be doing those things. We need to be telling people about Jesus. We need to be showing them love and inviting people to church, or just, sharing what Jesus has done in our lives. And
it seems like she embodied that so beautifully.
She did. She really did. And even like on her deathbed, she was just encouraging us to keep living. Like she was like, there's so many things that don't matter, but she's like, the kingdom matters. And she's like, she was always one who, she had the cleanest house I have ever seen. Like she would like clean behind her oven and her fridge, and like she'd take a toothbrush and like scrub everything, like literally every time she cleaned. Like And we would joke that she would like vacuum like the forest floor if she could, because she just like loved everything clean.
Yeah.
And like on her deathbed, she was like, that stuff doesn't even matter,
Yeah.
you know? And it doesn't. Like, look at what you leave behind. Like, you can't take any of that with you. So again, looking to what's unseen, like Jesus matters, living for his kingdom matters, telling people about the gospel matters. And so she was just encouraging us to do that, and also not to be mad at God. You know,
Yeah.
she's like, God's still faithful, God's still good. Don't be mad at him. You know, meanwhile, I'm just like hyperventilating because I'm like, how am I watching my mom die? You know? But she just still, like, that was days before, and she's just like, God's still good. She's singing praise songs to him and like raising her arm when she could barely move, and just literally finishing strong and thriving in her last days for the Lord. And like, when most people would probably just be like, no, I'm done, she was like, no, I love the Lord still, even still. So it makes me want to live my life with more purpose for sure. And just like know the truth, know the word, know Jesus more, be as close to him as I can be. You know, I keep asking for like wisdom and discernment and understanding, because I want to know what's right and share that with other people, so I'm not leading anybody astray or anything like that. And it just puts things in perspective. Like, you know, it, like nothing else does matter. Yeah. You know, and that also I think can just be like part of grief. You're like, oh, like what? Like nothing matters. But really, nothing does matter except for Jesus, you know? So.
Yeah, I love how you say finish the race strong, because it literally embodies Jesus too. Like, he suffered, and as Christians we're gonna suffer like he did, and he knew his mission, he knew what he was meant to do, he went through all of these things, and he was so determined to just finish the race and do what he came on earth to do.
Yeah. I like that, like going off of that, in Hebrews 12 it says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. I think we read that in life group too, but it's like, consider him who endured. He endured the sin of the world, beatings that almost killed him, and then he was hung on a cross. And like I said, like I just think of suffering differently, you know, like, and it just, I mean, everywhere in the Bible it talks about suffering and remembering what Jesus went through for us, and holding unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. Like, it's everywhere in here, you know, living for the Lord, not for ourselves, living for him, not for our worldly desires, and staying strong in the faith even when life's like this, you know. Like, there's just I don't know, there's just so much stuff that I didn't understand before, but I understand it more now, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much more revelation that God's bringing to me through all of this. And it's just amazing to see how like gradually he just speaks to us, and it's not like overwhelming where I feel like I want to push away, but he's like, oh, here, you know, here. And I'll ask a question and I open my Bible and it's like right there every time, you know. He's just so gentle and kind.
Yeah.
So
A couple points there. Who shared that with who? Because Liz talks about consider him a lot too.
Well, that's her favorite. That's like one of her favorite ones. And we like were talking about Hebrews, and she was like, oh, consider him. She's like, that's my favorite verse. So we've been saying that one a lot, but it's so good. Like, it's so good.
But yeah, literally, like, consider him in everything, everything we do, everything we go through. Like, this is gonna sound, I don't know, but like, when I think of consider him, have you ever seen The Passion? Anytime I'm like going through something and I think it's like the biggest deal in the world, that will like mentally pop into my head,
Yeah.
like him getting lashed, and I'm like, look what he went through,
Yeah.
and look what is so small, like compared to that. Like I'm complaining about this like bad driver, and like
Right.
look what
Right.
look
Right.
what
It's
Jesus
like
went through.
reality check. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like consider him in literally everything, and just
Everything.
bring him with you everywhere.
Yeah. I love too about Jesus. Like he's 100% man, 100% God. And with like just like the grief stuff, I was reading when he was in the garden before, he was going to be taken to be crucified. And it's like it said he was in agony, like thinking about what was to come.
Yeah.
And to the point where he was sweating blood, right? And he was like crying out to
Yeah.
God to take it away from him.
I think I recently read that.
And it just makes you think differently. Like he felt the weight. He felt, like what was to come and the dread. And he was like, God, like if you can take it from me. And like, can you imagine like sweating to the point where you're bleeding?
Yeah.
Like that's agony. I've been describing grief as agony because it's like, it's the worst pain, like it's awful. But like Jesus felt too, and with Lazarus, like he mourned too, and he knew he was going to raise him from the dead, but he was human, and he knows, like, and it talks about that in the Bible. Like he understands because he suffered too. He understands because he was tempted too. Like there's no feeling that we have that he doesn't know, and like he knows we're dust. He knows we're human, and he knows that we live in a fallen world, and there's like patience with that. Like I said, he doesn't rush you, or he doesn't say, oh, you shouldn't be sad. Like he was sad, he was he was crying, he was mourning. He knows, he understands. And like that softens my heart too, and like did early on. Like he wept and he felt, and so it's not like he's just sitting up there like, oh, that's a bummer. Like he weeps with us, he grieves with, like he understands how bad it feels, and he sits next to us and he's like, I'm here, you're gonna, it's gonna be hard, but one day. I just love that. But one day.
That's a verse in the Bible, isn't it? Jesus wept. Yeah, that's such a good one. Like it's just 2 words.
Yeah, I know.
And it's so powerful. Like he feels too, and like and there's nothing wrong, going back to like grieving, there's nothing wrong with needing that alone time, because he took alone time a lot to just feel and be emotional and praise and worship God and pray. Everybody needs that time. You were talking about suffering, and Michael says this too. Suffering and glory are married. We can't have glory without suffering.
But like nobody wants to talk about that, right?
Like that's what I was gonna say, is like, and then he says this too, is like everybody in this world is so selfish and just thinks about themselves, and that's how like most of the people live, like self-development books and all of those. Everything's like to get you to focus on yourself and to lift yourself up. And it's so against what the world believes, but we, like he says this, we go lower and he lifts us up instead of us doing it.
That's so good.
And that's what the enemy wants to do, is to make us so self-focused instead of focused on him. Going back to your mom, is even though like we don't know why and we don't understand, I think that we can always make something good of it. Like you on here sharing your story and sharing with people around you, and just like strengthening other people's faiths. Like look where you are now, like compared to, when was this, like a month?
July 17th.
in July, like look where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not like way up here, but you're stumbling like you said,
Yeah.
but you're still pursuing him,
Yeah.
like even in the midst of evil.
Mm.
Um,
It's
and
like the beauty from ashes, right?
yeah,
Like,
and I think that's just so powerful to like I said, to be able to like share your story, and that will like help others going through certain things, like maybe other people like have lost
yeah.
family members or parents, and then they see you and you can help them,
Yeah.
and like um, wherever this goes, like maybe you can share your story in like a book
Mm-hmm.
or like a blog or a YouTube video
Yeah.
or whatever. But I think you can make something beautiful out of it, which God always does.
Yeah. Even when we can't see it, right?
Yeah. Even when we can't see it, even when we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much for listening to part 2 of Adriana's story. I really hope you guys are enjoying this episode so far. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe on all platforms. Make sure you guys tune in next week for part 3, and I love you guys. See you then.